12 coworkers packed around the conference table, passing containers of takeout between animated discussions about weekend plans. I glanced down at the notification from an unknown number. Leave the building now. Don't tell your coworkers. My heartbeat quickened. I read it again, waiting for a follow-up text that never came. Around me, Micah from accounting was describing his disastrous blind date, while Evelyn nodded sympathetically. Director Prentice leaned against the doorframe, laughing at someone's joke. Just a prank, I told myself. But something about the message's urgency made my skin prickle. Finley, you're quiet today, Prentice commented, those calculating eyes landing on me. Not enjoying the celebration lunch I ordered for everyone? The same lunch she'd insisted we all attend. The same lunch that kept the entire team on the 14th floor together. Sorry, I muttered, sliding my phone into my pocket. Just checking something. The room's temperature seemed to drop. 6 months as research division lead, and I still felt Prentice watching my every move. Yesterday's discovery burned in my mind. Financial records showing millions diverted from safety testing into offshore accounts. Records I wasn't supposed to access. I stood casually. Need some air. Back in 5. Prentice's expression shifted subtly. Everything all right? Fine, I replied, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Just need to stretch my legs. Walking, not running, to the elevator felt like wading through water. Each step measured, each breath controlled. The security desk was empty, unusual for midday. When the elevator doors opened to the lobby, I saw them. Men in tactical gear positioned near the entrance, trying to look inconspicuous among the potted plants and leather seating areas. I veered toward the service exit instead, pushed through the door, and stepped into the alleyway. The moment my foot hit the pavement, a deafening alarm blared from the building behind me. Heavy security shutters slammed down over every exit. I'd made it out by seconds, but my entire team was now locked inside. I'll never forget what I saw when I turned back. Through the only window without shutters, 14 floors up, Director Prentice stood watching me. When our eyes met, her expression transformed from shock to murderous rage. She pressed her palm against the glass, mouthing 3 words I could read even from the street. I'll find you. Before I continue, I need to say something. Many people listen to these stories but scroll away without subscribing. If what you're about to hear grips you, and believe me, what happened next changed everything. Take a second to like and subscribe. Because once you hear how this unfolds, you'll want to know when similar stories drop. My name is Finley Ash. 6 months ago, I became the youngest research division leader at one of the nation's premier biochemical facilities. My specialty? Developing enzymes that neutralize industrial toxins in soil. My work could potentially save ecosystems destroyed by chemical waste, if it ever saw the light of day. The thing about me that Director Prentice underestimated? I never forget details. Ever. It's both my gift and my curse. I remember conversations verbatim from years ago. I recall numbers after seeing them once, and I never, ever forget a betrayal. Standing in that alley, watching tactical teams surround the building where my colleagues remained trapped, I knew I needed to disappear. The weight of the flash drive in my bra felt suddenly heavier, the one containing copies of every document I'd discovered yesterday. Evidence of what our Environmental Restoration Division was actually developing, a military-grade contaminant designed to render soil unusable for generations. I ducked behind a dumpster as more vehicles arrived, black SUVs with tinted windows. Men in suits emerged, flashing badges at local police. Whatever was happening wasn't just company security. This was federal. My phone vibrated again. The same unknown number. Royal Gardens Metro Station. Northwest entrance. 20 minutes. Look for the blue cap. Who was this person? How did they know? Questions swirled as I pulled my jacket hood up and began walking, not toward the metro, but in the opposite direction. Trust nothing. Verify everything. I slipped into a corner store 3 blocks away, purchased a baseball cap, sunglasses, and a prepaid phone with cash. In the bathroom, I twisted my auburn hair into a tight bun, hiding it completely under the cap. The store's TV was tuned to local news. No breaking reports about my building yet. Whatever was happening was being contained. That scared me more than an all-out evacuation would have. 15 minutes left to make the meeting. Still uncertain if I should go. My mysterious texter had saved me from whatever was happening inside, but that didn't mean they were on my side. I used the prepaid phone to call an old college friend who worked in cybersecurity. Veda, it's Finley. I need help, no questions. Finn? What's wrong? You sound... The number that just texted me. Can you trace it? I read her the digits, heard her fingers clacking on a keyboard. That's weird. It's bouncing between towers. Almost like, Finn, this looks like a government-grade anonymizer. My mouth went dry. Law enforcement? Could be. Or intelligence. Finn, what's going on? I ended the call without answering and removed my phone battery. The Royal Gardens station was a 10-minute walk. I still had no idea if I should go, but staying visible on the street wasn't an option either. I made my decision. Approaching the metro station from the opposite side, I watched the northwest entrance from across the street for 7 full minutes. Commuters streamed in and out. No one lingered suspiciously. At precisely the 20-minute mark, a tall figure in a navy peacoat and blue baseball cap descended the stairs into the station, not waiting for anyone, not looking around, just passing through as part of their routine. I followed at a distance, keeping 3 people between us at all times. The blue cap weaved through the crowd toward the eastbound platform, then stopped at a newspaper stand. I paused by a vending machine, pretending to search for change. The blue cap purchased a paper, then dropped something small behind the stand before walking away toward the platform. When the coast was clear, I casually approached, bent to tie my shoe, and reached behind the stand. My fingers closed around a tiny memory card. The eastbound train arrived. Blue cap boarded without ever looking in my direction. I remained on the platform, slipping the memory card into my pocket. 5 hours later, in a motel room paid for with cash under a false name, I finally examined its contents on the laptop I'd purchased at an electronics store. The file contained only 3 things: a message, an address in a small coastal town 200 miles away, and a photograph. The message: they're erasing everything. You have 72 hours before they find you. The photo made my blood freeze. It showed Director Prentice standing over a hospital bed where a man lay unconscious, connected to tubes and monitors. The man was Dr. Ellis Averitt, MPAU, my predecessor who had supposedly retired for health reasons 6 months ago. His retirement had opened the position I now held, the position that had given me access to discover what they were really developing, the position that had made me their next target. I sat motionless on the edge of the bed, piecing together a horrifying reality. Dr. Averitt had been researching soil rehabilitation techniques for 2 decades. His work was revolutionary, methods to restore ecosystems destroyed by industrial chemicals. When I took over his division, I found his research mysteriously incomplete, key components missing, notes that ended mid-sentence. I'd assumed he'd taken some knowledge into retirement. But now I understood. He hadn't retired. He'd discovered something, just as I had, and they'd silenced him. The project I'd been unknowingly advancing for 6 months wasn't about healing environmental damage. It was about creating a substance that could render vast agricultural regions permanently barren, a weapon disguised as its opposite. Yesterday, accessing financial records I wasn't supposed to see, I'd discovered enormous payments to offshore accounts, coinciding with meetings between Director Prentice and representatives from countries known for human rights violations. They were selling doomsday technology while claiming to develop environmental solutions. And now, like Averitt before me, I knew too much. The motel room television flickered with breaking news. A reporter stood outside my building, explaining that a chemical leak had prompted an evacuation. Behind her, workers in hazmat suits entered through the main doors. There was no chemical leak. This was a cover-up. I turned up the volume. Authorities are searching for Finley Ash, a research division leader who left the building shortly before the containment protocol was initiated. Officials want to question Ash about potential negligence related to the incident. My driver's license photo filled the screen. Just like that, I'd gone from respected scientist to fugitive. The narrative had been flipped. I wasn't the whistleblower. I was being framed as the perpetrator. My phone, the new prepaid one, buzzed with a text from Veda. They came to my apartment asking about you. Said you sabotaged equipment. Finn, what did you do? I stared at the message, a chill spreading through my body. They had already tracked my call to Veda. They were moving faster than I'd anticipated. I had to make a choice: run to the coastal address from the memory card, or try to gather more evidence to clear my name. Either way, I needed to disappear completely. Now, and somewhere in the shadows, watching this unfold, was the person in the blue cap, my unknown ally in this nightmare, or perhaps my unseen puppeteer. I'd need to become a ghost, someone without digital footprints or paper trails. I checked out of the motel before dawn, leaving the prepaid phone in a trash can 2 miles away. The coastal address was my only lead, a lifeline thrown by someone who, for reasons I couldn't fathom, wanted to help me. I purchased a bus ticket to a town 30 miles short of my actual destination. From there, I'd find another way forward, harder to track. During the 6-hour journey, I kept my cap pulled low, avoiding eye contact with other passengers. The driver announced stops in a monotone voice while I stared out the window, watching the urban landscape gradually surrender to rolling farmland. Farmland that people like Director Prentice were plotting to destroy. My mind drifted to when I first met her 9 months ago. The interview process had been grueling, 5 rounds of technical assessments and personality evaluations. When she'd finally offered me the position, her words still echoed in my memory. Your predecessor built this division, but you, Finley, you'll transform it. Your insight into enzymatic remediation techniques is exactly what we need to take this work to the next level. I'd been so proud, so honored. My parents, both school teachers who'd sacrificed everything for my education, had cried when I called with the news. After 15 years of study, research, and working my way up through lesser labs, I'd finally reached a position where my work could make a global difference. What a cruel joke it all seemed now. The bus lurched to a stop at a roadside diner. 30-minute break, the driver announced. Departing at 2:15 sharp, I needed to stretch my legs but hesitated at the thought of security cameras. Still, remaining on an empty bus might draw attention. I disembarked last, keeping my face angled away from the diner's entrance camera. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as bleary-eyed travelers lined up for coffee and prepackaged sandwiches. I ordered a black coffee and took it to the farthest booth, positioning myself with my back to the wall, facing the entrance. A television mounted above the counter played a news channel. The volume was low, but I could read the ticker at the bottom. Manhunt continues for scientists linked to laboratory containment breach. My hands trembled slightly, coffee threatening to spill. I set the cup down and focused on steadying my breathing. A woman slid into the booth across from me. Don't react, she said quietly. Keep looking normal. My muscles tensed. She was perhaps 50, with silver-streaked black hair cut in a practical bob. Nothing about her appearance suggested law enforcement or government agent. She wore hiking boots, khaki pants, and a faded denim jacket. Who are you? I whispered, calculating the distance to the emergency exit. Someone who worked with Ellis Averett before you. She placed a napkin on the table and slid it toward me. My name is Thea. I sent the text message yesterday. My pulse quickened. The blue cap at the metro? She nodded once. We don't have much time. You need to understand what you've stumbled into. They're developing environmental weapons, not restoration technology, I said, and selling them to foreign powers. Thea's expression darkened. That's just the surface. The project has a name, Operation Fallow Earth. It's designed to create targeted agricultural collapse in specific regions. The enzyme you've been perfecting doesn't just contaminate soil, it spreads through groundwater, multiplies, and adapts to different conditions. Cold dread settled in my stomach. That's not possible. The molecular structure would break down after Phalant. That's what we all thought, until Ellis discovered they'd spliced in self-replicating genetic material. Your division was solving the final piece, creating a delivery method that appears benign, a Trojan horse. I thought about the countless hours I'd spent in the lab, refining enzymatic structures, believing I was helping to heal poisoned ecosystems. All along, I'd been perfecting a doomsday weapon. Why would they do this? I asked, struggling to process the magnitude. Control, Thea said simply. Create artificial scarcity. Destroy competitors' agricultural capability. Force dependence on proprietary food sources. The applications are endless for those without moral constraints. And Ellis? When he discovered the truth, he tried to expose them. They poisoned him slowly, making it look like a degenerative condition. When that didn't silence him quickly enough, they accelerated the timeline. The image of Ellis in the hospital bed flashed in my mind. Is he still alive? Barely. They keep him in a medically induced coma at a private facility. Insurance, in case they need his knowledge. She checked her watch. Your bus leaves in 8 minutes. You can't be on it. Why are you helping me? Thea's eyes met mine, filled with a grief I couldn't fully comprehend. Ellis is my brother, and you're the only person with the expertise to help us stop this. My coffee sat untouched, growing cold. Us? There are others. Former researchers, whistleblowers. We've been gathering evidence for years, but we needed someone on the inside with access to the current formulations. She slid a key across the table. Rental car in the back lot, blue sedan. The address on the memory card is our safe house. I'll meet you there tonight. I hesitated, my trust stretched to breaking point. How do I know this isn't another trap? You don't, Thea acknowledged. But consider this. If I wanted to turn you in, I wouldn't be sitting here while federal agents swarm your original bus destination. They tracked your ticket purchase. As if on cue, my phone vibrated. The screen showed a news alert. Federal agents detain passengers at Hillcrest Bus Terminal in connection with fugitive scientist. My planned destination. If I'd stayed on that bus. Go now, Thea urged. Take country roads. Avoid main highways and toll booths. I pocketed the key and stood. If you're lying to me, I'm not the one who's been lying to you for 6 months, Finley. Her voice carried an edge of impatience. Director Prentice is holding an emergency press conference in an hour to announce your role in developing an unauthorized biological agent. They're painting you as an eco-terrorist. The reality of my situation crashed over me like a physical wave. There was no going back to my old life, no clearing my name through conventional channels. The people hunting me controlled the narrative, the evidence, and apparently, federal resources. I left without another word, slipping out the diner's side exit. The blue sedan waited in the far corner of the lot, partially hidden by a delivery truck. I scanned for surveillance cameras before approaching, then quickly got inside. The coastal address was 167 miles away according to the car's navigation system. I disabled it immediately, along with Bluetooth and any other wireless capabilities. Then I pulled out a paper map from the glove compartment and plotted a route using only back roads. As I drove away from the diner, the radio announced breaking news. I turned up the volume. Speaking live now from the headquarters of BioHorizon Industries is Director Camilla Prentice, addressing yesterday's laboratory incident. Prentice's voice filled the car, perfectly modulated to convey authority and regret. It is with profound disappointment that I must inform the public about a breach of trust within our research division. Finley Ash, hired 6 months ago to continue our groundbreaking environmental restoration work, has been secretly developing unauthorized biological agents with potentially catastrophic applications. My knuckles whitened around the steering wheel as she continued. We believe Ash intended to sell these formulations to foreign entities. When our security protocols detected unusual activity, Ash fled the facility moments before containment procedures were initiated. We are cooperating fully with federal authorities to apprehend this individual before further damage can be done. A reporter's voice cut in. Director Prentice, how could something like this happen under your supervision? An excellent question, Prentice replied, her voice softening with practiced humility. Ash came with impeccable credentials and recommendations. We are reviewing our hiring procedures, but I must emphasize that our internal safety protocols worked exactly as designed, preventing any release of harmful materials. I switched off the radio, nausea rising in my throat. The magnitude of the lie was breathtaking. They weren't just framing me, they were using me as cover for their entire operation. If they captured me now, I'd never get the chance to tell my side. I'd be disappeared, just like Ellis Averett. The rural landscape blurred past my windows as I pressed harder on the accelerator. Farmhouses and fields rolled by, places filled with people who had no idea their food security was being weaponized by people like Prentice. 3 hours into the journey, on a lonely stretch of county road, I noticed a black SUV appear in my rearview mirror. It maintained the same distance for several miles, never closing the gap, never falling behind. Just watching, waiting. I took a sharp right turn onto an unmarked dirt road, accelerating through the dust cloud my tires kicked up. The SUV followed. Not a coincidence. I'd been found. But how? I'd abandoned all traceable electronics. Unless I pulled over abruptly and popped the trunk. Throwing aside the spare tire cover, I ran my fingers along the underside of the carpet lining. There, a small, hard rectangle adhered to the metal. A tracking device. The blue sedan wasn't safety. It was surveillance. Thea hadn't been helping me escape. She'd been helping them track me. The SUV was closing in. I yanked the tracking device free and hurled it into the dense underbrush beside the road. My mind raced through possibilities. Had Thea intentionally led me into a trap? Or had her vehicle been compromised without her knowledge? Either way, staying with this car meant capture. I grabbed the small backpack containing my essentials and the flash drive, then plunged into the woods running perpendicular to the road. The dense foliage provided cover as I heard car doors slam behind me. Subject is on foot, heading west into the tree line. Male voices shouted commands. The crack of twigs and rustling leaves told me at least 3 people were in pursuit. I pushed deeper into the forest, brambles tearing at my clothes as I maintained a steady pace. Panic would only drain my energy faster. My graduate research had required extensive fieldwork. I'd spent months navigating remote wilderness areas collecting soil samples. Those skills were keeping me alive now. I spotted a shallow stream ahead and splashed into it, following its course downstream to mask my scent and footprints. The frigid water numbed my feet through my shoes, but I pressed on for nearly half a mile before climbing out on a rocky outcropping that wouldn't hold footprints. The voices behind me had faded. For the moment, I'd created distance. Slumped against a tree trunk, I tried to process Thea's betrayal. If she was working with Prentice, why go through such an elaborate charade? Why not simply have me arrested at the diner? Unless they needed something from me first. The flash drive, perhaps, or access to research notes I'd stored elsewhere. I pulled out the memory card Thea had left at the metro station. The coastal address could be another trap, but it was also my only lead. Without it, I had nowhere to go. As dusk approached, I navigated using the setting sun, moving steadily southeast, away from both the road and the coastal address. I needed time to think, to form a plan that didn't rely on anyone else's guidance. Night fell completely as I reached the edge of the forest. Beyond stretched acres of farmland, and in the distance, the twinkling lights of a small town. Too exposed to cross in darkness, I found a sheltered position beneath a fallen tree and prepared to wait for morning. The temperature dropped rapidly. I huddled deeper into my jacket, exhaustion finally overtaking adrenaline. My eyelids grew heavy despite my best efforts. A sharp crack jolted me awake. Disoriented, I realized I'd fallen asleep. The moon had shifted position. I'd been out for at least 2 hours. Another sound, a footstep, deliberately placed. Someone was approaching my hiding spot. I curled into the smallest shape possible, controlling my breathing. A beam of light swept the forest floor, passing inches from my position. Heat signature shows she was here recently. A woman's voice. Not Thea's. Spread out, she can't have gone far. Male, authoritative. I remained perfectly still as flashlight beams crisscrossed the area. They were using thermal imaging. I had minutes, maybe seconds, before they found me. A soft thud sounded in the distance, followed by shouting. The flashlights immediately redirected away from me, moving toward the commotion. Contact, southwest perimeter. All units converge. The footsteps receded rapidly. Something or someone had diverted their attention. This was my only chance. I crawled from my hiding place and moved in the opposite direction, staying low to the ground. When I reached the field's edge, I noticed a drainage ditch running along its perimeter. Perfect cover for crossing the exposed ground. Sliding into the ditch, I began army crawling through its muddy bottom. The journey was agonizingly slow, but the overhead cover from tall grass made detection nearly impossible. After what felt like hours, I reached the outskirts of the small town. The illuminated sign of a 24-hour convenience store glowed a quarter-mile ahead, a potential risk, but I needed supplies and information. I approached cautiously, checking for surveillance cameras before entering. The sleepy cashier barely looked up from his phone as I purchased water, protein bars, and a local map. The store television played an overnight news program, intensifying the search for fugitive scientist Finley Ash, now believed to be armed and dangerous. Federal authorities have expanded the search perimeter to include 3 additional counties after a possible sighting near Willow Creek. Willow Creek was over 50 miles from my current location. Either someone had misidentified me, or the authorities were deliberately broadcasting misinformation. I studied the map under the store's fluorescent lights. 15 miles northeast was a freight rail line that connected to major shipping ports. If I could reach it by dawn, I might be able to hop a train heading toward the coast. Outside the store, I glimpsed a battered pickup truck with the keys left in the ignition. The temptation to steal it was overwhelming, but that would trigger immediate alerts. Instead, I continued on foot, using residential streets with minimal lighting. Dawn was breaking when I reached the railway. I'd walked through the night, pushing my body beyond exhaustion. Concealed in the tall grass beside the tracks, I waited. 2 hours later, a slow-moving freight train approached. As it labored up a slight incline, I made my move, running alongside an empty boxcar and pulling myself inside. The interior was dark and dusty, empty except for some abandoned packing materials. I collapsed against the wall, finally allowing my muscles to relax. The rhythmic clacking of the train's wheels provided strange comfort as miles disappeared behind me. My thoughts returned to Thea. The tactical team hunting me had used thermal imaging, technology far beyond standard law enforcement equipment. This was a militarized operation. Had Thea known what she was sending me into? Was she a willing participant in this manhunt, or another pawn in Prentice's game? I pulled out the memory card again, examining the coastal address. What waited for me there? A safe house filled with allies? Or another carefully orchestrated trap, only one way to find out? The train journey lasted 6 hours, stopping occasionally in rail yards where I remained hidden in the shadows of the boxcar. When it finally approached the coastal region, I disembarked on the outskirts of a small fishing town. The salty air filled my lungs as I oriented myself using the map. The address was 3 miles north, in an area marked as private shoreline. I followed coastal paths, keeping the ocean to my right and dense vegetation to my left. Perfect coverage if I needed to disappear quickly. As the sun began setting, I spotted the property, a weathered blue cottage perched on a rocky bluff overlooking the sea. No vehicles visible, no signs of surveillance equipment, just a solitary structure against the darkening sky. I circled the property twice, watching for movement from a concealed position among coastal shrubs. Nothing. The cottage appeared empty. Approaching the back entrance, I tested the door handle. Locked. I found a window with a broken latch and carefully worked it open, then slipped inside. The interior was sparsely furnished but clean. No dust on surfaces, fresh food in the refrigerator. Someone had been here recently. I conducted a thorough search, checking for cameras or listening devices. Nothing obvious, but that didn't mean they weren't there. On the kitchen table sat a laptop computer. Open, powered on, waiting. A message displayed on the screen. Finley, if you're reading this, you've made it safely. I know you have no reason to trust me after what happened with the tracking device. It wasn't my car. The vehicle was compromised after I left it for you. We've been infiltrated. Trust no one until you've viewed the enclosed files. The password is the name of Ellis's first research station in Argentina. You visited it during your doctoral work. I stared at the message, conflicted. How would Thea know about my doctoral research? That information wasn't publicly available. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed, Esperanza Basin. The screen unlocked, revealing dozens of video files. The first was security footage from our research facility, specifically, the conference room where our team lunches were held. The timestamp showed the day of my escape. Director Prentice stood at the head of the table, addressing my colleagues. Today's demonstration will prove conclusively that our formulation works exactly as designed, she was saying. The containment protocol will simulate actual deployment conditions. Your participation is crucial to the final testing phase. My blood ran cold. The chemical leak hadn't been a cover story invented after my escape. It had been planned all along. They had gathered my entire team in that room intentionally. I clicked on the next file. A grainy video showed Ellis Averett speaking directly to the camera, his face gaunt, but his eyes clear and focused. If you're watching this, I'm likely dead or still being held in medical containment. My name is Ellis Averett. Until 6 months ago, I led research at BioHorizon Industries' Environmental Division. What I'm about to share will sound like the ravings of a paranoid mind. I only ask that you review the supporting documentation before making that judgment. Ellis detailed the evolution of Project Fallow Earth, PST, how it had begun as legitimate research into soil remediation, but had been gradually corrupted under Prentice's leadership, how research findings were manipulated, data falsified, and dangerous components introduced without the knowledge of most team members. They needed specialists who wouldn't recognize the broader implications of their individual contributions, Ellis explained. Compartmentalization allowed brilliant minds to unwittingly create something monstrous, just as I had done. The final video was the most disturbing. Dated 3 weeks earlier, it showed Prentice meeting with uniformed military officials from countries known for human rights violations. They discussed deployment scenarios, pricing structures, and exclusivity agreements. The weapon I'd helped create was being auctioned to the highest bidders. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. The cottage suddenly felt exposed. If Thea had been compromised, this location might be as well. I was gathering my belongings to leave when headlights swept across the front windows. A vehicle was approaching the cottage. I doused all lights and moved to a position where I could observe without being seen. A single figure emerged from the car, a woman, walking with a slight limp, Thea. She approached the front door cautiously, then stopped. Something had alerted her. She turned, scanning the surroundings, then quickly returned to her vehicle and drove away without entering. I remained frozen in place, unsure what had spooked her. 20 minutes passed in silence before I dared move again. That's when I noticed it. A small red light blinking beneath the kitchen table. A device that hadn't been there during my initial search. Someone had been here before me. Someone had planted surveillance equipment and left. I needed to disappear again. But first, I had to secure the evidence on the laptop. I copied all files onto my flash drive, then wiped the computer's hard drive completely. As I prepared to leave through the same window I'd entered, a new text message appeared on the burner phone I'd purchased. Cottage compromised. Ellis moved to secondary location. They know you've accessed the files. Prentice arriving with tactical team in 30 minutes. Head to Lighthouse Point. Boat waiting. This is your last chance to trust me, T. Trust. Such a simple word for something so impossibly complex in this moment. The moon had risen, casting silver light across the coastal path as I weighed my options. The lighthouse stood on a rocky peninsula a mile north of the cottage, exposed, visible from all directions, perfect for an ambush. Or perfect for a genuine escape. I had 30 minutes to decide if Thea was my salvation or my executioner. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Trust had become a luxury I couldn't afford, yet doing nothing wasn't an option either. I slipped outside, staying low beneath the cottage windows. The coastal wind carried the scent of salt and seaweed as I analyzed my surroundings. 2 escape routes presented themselves. Follow Thea's instructions to the lighthouse, or disappear into the dense coastal forest stretching inland. The wilderness offered anonymity but no destination. The lighthouse offered purpose but potential betrayal. My scientific mind demanded data before conclusions. I needed more information about Thea. I pulled out the memory card again, examining the metadata on the files. Most had been created months ago, long before I discovered the truth about Project Fallow Earth. The timestamps aligned with Ellis Averett's employment timeline. If Thea was working with Prentice, why provide evidence that predated my involvement? Why supply files that implicated Prentice so thoroughly? 25 minutes until Prentice's team arrived. I made my decision. Moving silently along the coastal path, I positioned myself 200 yards from the lighthouse, concealed among jagged rocks. From this vantage point, I could observe without committing. The lighthouse stood stark against the night sky, its automated beams sweeping across the dark water. Below it, a small dock extended into a sheltered cove. A fishing boat bobbed gently against the moorings. No signs of an ambush team. No tactical vehicles hidden nearby. 20 minutes left. I crept closer, using natural cover. When I reached the base of the lighthouse, I circled it completely, checking for hidden personnel. Nothing. The boat's cabin lights were off, but I could make out a single figure sitting in the darkness. As I watched, they struck a match, briefly illuminating Thea's face as she lit a cigarette. She was alone, waiting, a dangerous chance to take if she were truly setting a trap. 15 minutes remaining. The distant sound of vehicles reached my ears, coming from the direction of the cottage. Prentice's team arriving early. I had seconds to decide. I emerged from the rocks and sprinted toward the dock. Thea spotted me immediately, extinguishing her cigarette and starting the boat's engine. "Quickly!" she called, extending her hand as I leapt aboard. "They're already here." The boat's motor roared to life as I landed on the deck. Thea pushed away from the dock, navigating into deeper water with practiced efficiency. Behind us, flashlight beams swept the coastal path. Voices called out commands. We were spotted just as the boat cleared the cove's entrance. "Down!" Thea shouted as a crack split the air. A bullet struck the water beside us. I dropped to the deck as Thea opened the throttle fully. The small fishing vessel surged forward, bouncing violently over the waves as we escaped into the darkness. For 10 minutes, neither of us spoke. Thea focused on navigating while I kept watch for pursuit vessels. None appeared. When the coastline had faded to a distant smudge, Thea finally addressed me. "I'm sorry about the car. I didn't know it was tracked." "Who are you really?" I demanded. "How do you know about my doctoral research? About Esperanza Basin?" Thea reduced the engine to a quieter purr before answering. "I was Ellis's research partner for 15 years. We documented everything Prentice and her team were doing, built evidence piece by piece. When they poisoned him, I continued alone. And you recruited me because?" "We didn't recruit you," she corrected. "Prentice did. But we'd been watching you for years. Your published papers on enzymatic soil remediation caught Ellis's attention. He said you were either going to complete his work for good or for evil, depending on who reached you first. So, when I discovered the truth, we were ready. We've had contingency plans in place for whoever filled Ellis's position." She adjusted our course slightly. "The text warning you to leave the building came from me. I had infiltrated their security systems months ago." The boat rocked gently as we traveled parallel to the coastline, always maintaining distance. My mind processed this new information against everything I'd experienced. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. "To Ellis. The real Ellis." "He's alive?" "The photo on the memory card was taken 3 months ago. We managed to extract him from their medical facility 6 weeks ago, but he's still recovering." Dawn was breaking as we approached a different section of coastline, MBAM, more rugged, with towering cliffs rather than beaches. Thea navigated toward a narrow opening in the rock face, barely visible until we were nearly upon it. The passage led to a concealed cove with a small private dock. Camouflaged among the rocks and trees stood a modern structure of concrete and glass, architecture designed to blend with the natural surroundings. "Our research station," Thea explained as she cut the engine. "Off-grid, self-sufficient, and invisible to satellite imaging." 2 people emerged from the building as we docked, a tall man with a close-cropped gray beard and a younger woman with dark skin and precisely braided hair. "This is Dr. Nora Kellis, our biochemical engineer," Thea introduced, "and Dr. Malik, our security specialist." Dr. Kellis approached first, her expression cautious. "You've been all over the news, Dr. Ash. Quite the reputation you've developed." "None of it my doing," I responded, stepping onto the dock. "We know," Dr. Malik said, his British accent unexpected. "We've been monitoring the disinformation campaign against you. Quite sophisticated. They led me through a hidden entrance into the facility. Unlike the sterile environment of BioHorizons laboratories, this space felt alive. plants growing in specialized containers, natural light streaming through strategic windows, the quiet hum of advanced equipment. We call it the sanctuary, Thea explained. Part research facility, part safe house. How many of you are there? 17 former BioHorizon scientists and researchers. Dr. Kellis answered. All of us discovered pieces of Project Fallow Earth. All of us were targeted in various ways when we raised concerns. We entered a large central room filled with monitors displaying news feeds, scientific data, and surveillance imagery. Several people worked at computer stations, barely glancing up as we entered. Welcome to Resistance Headquarters, Dr. Malik said with grim humor. Not quite what you'd expect from a group of scientists, is it? It wasn't. This wasn't just a hideout. It was an operation. Organized, equipped, and purposeful. Where's Ellis? I asked. Thea led me through another doorway into a medical suite. On a bed surrounded by monitoring equipment lay Ellis Averett. His body was thin, almost skeletal, but his eyes were alert as we entered. Finley Ash, he said, his voice surprisingly strong despite his frail appearance. I hoped you'd make it. Dr. Averett. I approached his bedside. I've been using your research notes for months, and improving on them, I'm told. His lips curved in a slight smile, though not in the direction I intended. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. He waved away my apology. Compartmentalization, the perfect tool for turning good scientists into unwitting accomplices. Over the next hour, Ellis filled in the gaps in my knowledge. Project Fallow Earth had evolved from a legitimate soil remediation program into a weaponized system capable of rendering agricultural land sterile for decades. The modifications I'd made, believing I was improving environmental restoration capabilities, had actually enhanced its destructive potential. The enzyme's delivery mechanism was the final challenge, Ellis explained. They needed a way to introduce it that wouldn't trigger immediate detection. Your work on encapsulation techniques solved that problem. My stomach twisted with the realization. The celebration, lunch, the day I received the text message, was that, a field test, Thea confirmed, using your colleagues as test subjects for exposure levels. Horror washed over me. Are they alive but quarantined? Dr. Kellis interjected. Prentice is monitoring them for symptoms, cellular changes, immune responses. Your team became living test subjects. The magnitude of Prentice's betrayal left me speechless. Not just of me, but of an entire division of scientists who had trusted her leadership. Why would she risk exposing her own facility? I finally asked. Controlled testing environment, Ellis replied. And expendable personnel who already had security clearances. Perfect conditions for a final verification before selling to international clients. Dr. Malik approached with a tablet displaying satellite imagery. Prentice has scheduled demonstrations for potential buyers next week. 3 locations, all on American soil, disguised as environmental remediation projects. I studied the coordinates. All 3 were agricultural regions crucial to food production. They're going to contaminate our own farmland as a sales demonstration. I couldn't mask my disbelief. Small areas, easily contained in their view, Thea explained. But our analysis suggests the enzyme will spread much further than their models predict. Once released, it could affect thousands of square miles through groundwater migration. We need to stop them, I said, the words feeling inadequate against the scale of the threat. That's why you're here, Ellis replied. You understand the enzyme structure better than anyone, even me. You need to develop a neutralizing agent. I'd need samples, equipment, data. We have everything, Dr. Kellis interrupted, including samples of your most recent formulations. The question is whether you can create a countermeasure before the demonstrations begin. How long do I have? 5 days. An impossible timeline for normal research. But these weren't normal circumstances. Show me the lab, I said. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of intensive work. I slept in short bursts, often at the workstation. The sanctuary's facilities were remarkable. Equipment I'd never seen outside of elite research institutions. Computing power that could process complex molecular simulations in minutes instead of days. Dr. Kellis worked alongside me, her expertise in biochemical engineering complementing my knowledge of enzymatic structures. Together, We identified the self-replicating components Ellis had mentioned, genetic material spliced into the enzyme's core that allowed it to adapt to different soil conditions. It's brilliant in a horrifying way, Doctor. Kellis observed as we studied the molecular models. The enzyme doesn't just contaminate, it transforms, permanently altering soil chemistry to prevent normal plant growth. And it spreads through groundwater, I added, multiplying as it goes. One small application could render an entire watershed sterile. On the third day, we had our breakthrough. The enzyme's replication mechanism had a fatal weakness, a dependency on specific mineral compounds to maintain stability during reproduction. Deprive it of those compounds, and the entire structure would collapse. We need a mineral chelation agent, I explained to the team during our briefing. Something that will bind to the specific minerals the enzyme requires, making them unavailable. Like treating metal poisoning in humans. Ellis nodded, understanding immediately. Exactly. We've identified 3 mineral compounds essential to the enzyme's replication process. If we can develop a chelation formula that targets those specifically, we can neutralize entire contaminated areas. How quickly can you produce it? Dr. Malik asked. The formula is relatively simple, Dr. Kellis answered. The challenge is delivery. We need to match their deployment method to ensure complete coverage. We have another problem, Thea interrupted, entering with a tablet displaying a news feed. Prentice has moved up the schedule. First demonstration is tomorrow at sunrise. The room fell silent as implications settled over us. Where? Ellis finally asked. Walker County Agricultural District. They're disguising it as an emergency soil treatment following a fabricated chemical spill. I looked at Dr. Kellis. We need to finalize the neutralizing agent now. No more testing iterations. That's dangerous, she cautioned. We haven't confirmed long-term stability. We don't have time for long-term anything, I countered. If that enzyme gets released tomorrow, thousands of acres of farmland will be destroyed. Ellis raised a hand, silencing our debate. Both concerns are valid. We need a 2-track approach. Finley, you and Nora complete the neutralizing agent. Thea, Malik, prepare an intervention team. If we can't neutralize the enzyme, we need to prevent its deployment entirely. The next 12 hours were the most intense of my professional life. As midnight approached, Dr. Kellis and I finalized the chelation formula and produced enough to treat approximately 50 acres, a fraction of what we might need, but all our equipment could synthesize in the available time. Meanwhile, Thea and Dr. Malik prepared tactical equipment I never expected to see scientists handling with such proficiency. You're not just researchers, are you? I asked Thea as she checked what appeared to be communications gear. Most of us started that way, she replied without looking up. Circumstances required adaptation. At 3 a.m., we gathered for final briefing. Dr. Malik displayed satellite imagery of the target location, a vast agricultural research field surrounded by commercial farmland. Prentice's team will arrive at 5:30 a.m., 1 hour before sunrise. He explained. Their standard protocol requires 30 minutes for equipment setup. Deployment is scheduled precisely at sunrise, 6:32 a.m. Our window is extremely narrow, Thea continued. We need to intercept after their equipment is in place, but before deployment begins. What about law enforcement? I asked. Can't we alert them? With what evidence? Ellis replied from his wheelchair. His insistence on participating had overridden medical advice. Prentice has connections throughout federal agencies. By the time we convinced anyone, the demonstration would be complete. We're on our own, Dr. Malik confirmed. As we prepared to depart, Ellis called me to his side. Finley, there's something you should know. Something I haven't told the others. His expression was grave, his voice lowered. Project Fallow Earth has a secondary component. The enzyme doesn't just target plant life. Extended exposure affects mammalian cellular structures as well. My blood ran cold. It's designed to harm people too. Not immediately. The effects manifest slowly. Reproductive issues first, then neurological symptoms. By the time a population realizes what's happening, it's too late. My God, I whispered. It's not just an agricultural weapon. It's a slow-acting genocide tool, Ellis confirmed. Targeting food supplies first, than the people themselves. Prentice is selling the ultimate weapon of mass destruction, IS, one that leaves infrastructure intact while eliminating populations. The revelation transformed everything. This wasn't just about saving farmland anymore. The stakes had become incalculably higher. As our team loaded equipment into unmarked vehicles, I felt a transformation within myself. The scientist who had dedicated her life to healing damaged ecosystems was now preparing for battle to prevent their deliberate destruction. Director Prentice hadn't just betrayed me professionally, she had betrayed humanity itself. And as we drove through the darkness toward Walker County, I made a silent promise. This would end today, not just for me, but for every person whose life hung in the balance without their knowledge. Prentice's reckoning was coming. The pre-dawn darkness cloaked our approach to Walker County. We traveled in 2 vehicles. Dr. Malik drove our lead car containing the neutralizing agent, while Thea followed with Ellis and additional equipment. The agricultural research station loomed ahead, its perimeter marked by chain-link fencing and security lights. 2 entrance points, Dr. Malik observed, passing me a pair of night vision binoculars. Main gate is guarded. Service entrance on the east side appears minimally secured. I scanned the facility. Several vehicles were already parked near a central building, black SUVs with tinted windows and a large truck with equipment loaded in its bed. Prentice had arrived early. "They're ahead of schedule," I warned, checking my watch. 5:12 a.m. We have less time than we thought. Dr. Malik parked in a grove of trees a quarter-mile from the facility. Thea pulled in beside us, and we quickly unloaded our equipment. "Remember," Ellis said as we gathered for final instructions, "our primary objective is preventing the enzyme deployment. Confronting Prentice is secondary." But for me, the 2 objectives had become inseparable. The woman who had manipulated me, endangered my colleagues, and planned ecological devastation needed to face consequences. We approached the east fence under cover of darkness. Dr. Malik produced specialized cutting tools, creating an opening large enough to pass through. Inside the perimeter, we split into 2 teams. Thea and Dr. Malik would secure the deployment equipment, while Ellis and I would locate Prentice and the enzyme containers. "Comm check," Thea whispered, adjusting her earpiece. We all responded in sequence. 4 scientists playing at infiltration. The absurdity wasn't lost on me, but desperation had transformed us all. "Central field, 2 o'clock, Ellis directed, pointing toward figures moving around what appeared to be spraying equipment. Standard agricultural dispersal system. We moved silently through rows of experimental crops, using their height as cover. As we drew closer, voices became distinguishable. "Calibration complete," a male technician called. "Ready for loading." "Proceed with container transfer," replied a voice I instantly recognized. Director Prentice stood beside the spraying equipment, tablet in hand, directing the operation with clinical detachment. 4 large canisters were being wheeled toward the sprayer, each containing enough of the enzyme to contaminate hundreds of acres. "Dr. Malik, status?" I whispered into my communicator. "In position near the control panel," came the response. "Ready to disable on your mark." I glanced at Ellis, who nodded grimly. "Remember the sequence," he reminded me. "Disable equipment, neutralize samples, secure evidence." The eastern horizon had begun to lighten imperceptibly. We had perhaps 20 minutes before the scheduled deployment. "Execute," Ellis commanded. Dr. Malik's team moved first. A small electromagnetic pulse device, something I hadn't known existed outside of military applications, disabled the sprayer's electronic controls. Simultaneously, Thea approached from the opposite direction, creating a diversion by activating the facility's fire alarm system. Confusion erupted among Prentice's team. Security personnel moved toward the main building, investigating the alarm. The technicians working on the sprayer stepped back, uncertain what had caused the equipment failure. Prentice remained calm, issuing orders to override the system manually. She hadn't noticed us yet. This was our moment. Ellis and I approached the enzyme canisters, carrying our neutralizing agent. We had mere seconds before someone spotted us. I reached the first canister and was preparing to inject our formula when a shout went up. "Security breach. Perimeter east fence." Prentice spun around, her eyes widening as they locked with mine. Recognition, then fury crossed her face. Ash, she hissed. How predictable. Two security guards changed direction, moving toward us with weapons drawn. Dr. Malik intercepted one, displaying combat skills I wouldn't have expected from a scientist. Thea engaged the other, creating crucial seconds for us to work. I turned my attention back to the canisters, injecting our neutralizing agent into the first one. The chelation process would take minutes to fully neutralize the enzyme, time we didn't have. Stop her, Prentice commanded, moving toward me with surprising speed. Ellis positioned his wheelchair between us. Hello, Camilla, he said, his voice steady. It's been a while. Prentice froze, genuine shock replacing her composed expression. Ellis, you're supposed to be, what? Dead, comatose? Yes, your medical team was quite thorough. Not thorough enough, evidently. While they confronted each other, I moved to the second canister, then the third, injecting our formula. One remaining. Prentice recovered quickly, reaching for her phone. This changes nothing. In fact, having you both here simplifies matters. One accident, two problematic researchers eliminated. You've underestimated us, Camilla, Ellis replied. We know everything. Project Fallow Earth, the secondary mammalian effects, the international buyers. You know nothing. She snapped, her composure cracking. You're playing at corporate espionage, Ellis. This is global security. Targeted agricultural control ensures American dominance in an unstable world. You're selling a weapon that kills people slowly through their food supply, I interjected, moving toward the final canister. There's no patriotic justification for genocide. Genocide? Prentice laughed coldly. We're talking about precision targeting of hostile agricultural systems. Collateral effects are expected in any strategic operation. As she spoke, I injected the final canister. All 4 enzyme containers were now being neutralized from within. A small victory, but not enough. The horizon was brightening. More security personnel were converging on our position. Thea and Dr. Malik were now surrounded, though still fighting. Prentice smiled, sensing her advantage. Your little sabotage attempt has failed, Finley. Even if you've somehow compromised today's demonstration, we have production facilities worldwide. The technology exists. It can't be undone. That's when I revealed the truth she didn't know. This was never about stopping one demonstration, Director. I held up my phone, which had been recording our entire exchange. This was about exposing you. Her eyes narrowed. To whom? Your fugitives. Discredited. No one will believe you. They already do, Ellis interjected. As we speak, your conversation is being transmitted to 17 different secure servers. From there, it's being distributed to every major news organization, regulatory agency, and international monitoring body. I continued. Your buyers are also receiving it. All those representatives from countries you promised exclusivity. They're learning you've sold the same technology to their adversaries. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Prentice's face. You're bluffing. Simultaneously, Ellis added, comprehensive data packages detailing Project Fallow Earth are being delivered to the Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Agriculture, and World Health Organization. Your own research, Camilla. Your own documentation of intentional soil contamination and expected human casualties. The security team had reached us now, but they hesitated, hearing fragments of our conversation. Doubt was visible on their faces. These men work for a private security firm contracted by BioHorizon. I addressed them directly. They aren't legally obligated to participate in environmental terrorism or human rights violations. In fact, they're now witnesses to an admission of criminal intent. Several guards exchanged glances. Their loyalty was clearly wavering. Dawn had broken. The time for the demonstration had arrived, but the spraying equipment remained disabled, the enzyme neutralized. In that moment of hesitation, everything changed. The facility's main gate burst open as vehicles bearing federal agency markings entered. Not Prentice's allies. These were responding to the evidence packages our team had distributed hours earlier as a contingency plan. Director Camilla Prentice, a woman in a dark suit, approached, flanked by agents. I'm Special Agent Vanessa Chen, Environmental Crimes Division. You're wanted for questioning regarding allegations of environmental terrorism, criminal conspiracy, and fraud. Prentice's face contorted with rage. This is a corporate security matter. You have no jurisdiction here. We have multiple federal warrants, Agent Chen replied evenly, and cooperation requests from 3 international bodies. Your corporate security matter became federal jurisdiction when you weaponized restricted biological compounds. As Prentice was led away, her final glare promised retribution, but we both knew her power was broken. The carefully constructed narrative she'd created, positioning me as the rogue scientist while she played the concerned executive, had collapsed entirely. The sun climbed higher as federal agents secured the facility. Our team was detained as well, but treated as witnesses rather than suspects. The enzyme canisters were confiscated for analysis, their contents now harmless thanks to our neutralizing agent. In the following days, the full scope of Project Fallow Earth was revealed to a horrified public. BioHorizon Industries' stock collapsed as investigations uncovered decades of environmental crimes. International arrest warrants were issued for executives who had fled the country. My colleagues, the unwitting test subjects from that fateful lunch, were transferred to specialized medical facilities. The exposure had been limited, and our neutralizing agent proved effective in treating their symptoms. Recovery would be slow but complete. 1 month later, I sat across from Agent Chen in a secure debriefing facility. The formal interviews had concluded days ago, but she had requested this final meeting. Dr. Ash, I want to personally thank you for your courage, she began. Your evidence was instrumental in dismantling one of the most dangerous environmental conspiracies we've encountered. What happens now? I asked. Director Prentice faces multiple life sentences. 7 other executives have been indicted. The company's assets have been frozen pending further investigation. She paused. As for you, your name has been officially cleared. The Department of Justice issued a formal exoneration yesterday. Relief washed over me, though it felt strangely hollow after everything that had happened. And my team? The other scientists? Most will recover fully. They've all been offered positions with legitimate research institutions. Agent Chen smiled slightly. Including you, if you're interested. The Environmental Protection Agency is establishing a new division focused on soil remediation technologies. They've requested you specifically to lead it. The irony wasn't lost on me. The work I'd thought I was doing all along, healing damaged ecosystems rather than destroying them, could now become reality. What about Ellis and the others at the sanctuary? Officially, we know nothing about any sanctuary, Agent Chen replied carefully. Unofficially, their contributions have been noted at the highest levels. They'll be protected. As our meeting concluded, Agent Chen handed me a sealed envelope. This arrived for you yesterday. We've verified it's safe. Inside was a handwritten note from Ellis. Finley, the truth is, both our weapon and our shield. You wielded it perfectly. The sanctuary remains if you ever need it. The door is always open. 2 days later, I stood on the steps of the federal courthouse after providing final testimony against Prentice. Reporters called questions from behind barriers. Cameras flashed. For weeks, I had been the scientist who exposed an international conspiracy, my face appearing on news broadcasts worldwide. But as the media circus continued, I realized something profound. The revenge I had initially sought against Prentice for framing me had transformed into something far more important: justice for the environment and the communities who depended on it. My personal vindication was merely a footnote in a larger story about corporate accountability and scientific ethics. The text message that had saved me that day had set in motion not just my survival, but the prevention of global catastrophe. As I descended the courthouse steps, a familiar figure waited beside a nondescript car, Thea, now serving as liaison between former BioHorizon scientists and federal investigators. Ready to disappear for a while? She asked as I approached. I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the public scrutiny. More than ready. Ellis has set up a new research facility. Off the books, but with unofficial government blessing. Real environmental remediation this time. No more compartmentalization, I asked. Complete transparency, she confirmed. Every scientist knows exactly what they're working on and why. As we drove away from the courthouse, I watched the city recede in the side mirror. My thoughts returned to that moment in the break room, unwrapping my sandwich, receiving the text that changed everything. One simple warning had cascaded into the exposure of a global conspiracy. One moment of trust in an anonymous message had prevented ecological disaster. If you've stayed with me through this story, you understand the power of truth, how it can be buried, distorted, but never permanently silenced. Like those environmental enzymes I once studied, truth finds a way to persist, to spread, to transform landscapes. For those listening who face their own moments of decision, when staying silent seems safer than speaking up, remember that courage isn't about fearlessness. It's about acting despite fear. It's about trusting that one voice, one action, one moment of bravery can trigger consequences beyond imagination. Director Prentice never understood that attempting to bury the truth is like trying to contain an enzyme designed to spread. The harder you work to suppress it, the more dramatically it eventually emerges. My name is Finley Ash. I was nearly erased, my reputation destroyed, my life threatened, my work corrupted. Instead, I became the catalyst for exposing one of history's most dangerous environmental conspiracies. All because I chose to trust a text message from an unknown number during my lunch break. If you found yourself holding your breath during any part of this story, if you felt that surge of satisfaction when justice finally arrived, take a moment to like and subscribe. More stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances are waiting to be told. Moments when a single decision changes everything. Because sometimes, the most important message you'll ever receive comes when you least expect it, from someone you don't know, telling you to walk away from everything familiar into an uncertain future. And sometimes, trusting that message makes all the difference.